What's it gonna be today? Skyline three-way or cheese conies? That's a tough one. I know. Give me a Skyline three-way and cheese conies. Problem solved. Feeling good. It's Skyline time.
Hey, pull up a chair. It's Hacks on Tap with David Axelrod, Robert Gibbs, and Mike Murphy.
You are promising America tonight you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Except
Look,
what?
he's going crazy. Except for day one.
Meaning?
I want to close the border and I want to drill.
That's
drill,
not
drill.
That's not retribution.
Well, Mike Murphy, that was it's just such a coincidence that Trump should present himself as dictator for a day, because that's what Gibbs and I were going to give you for the holidays. We were going to make you a dictator for a day. We thought you'd enjoy it. Now it's kind of ruined.
We would be marching to a new beat around here, let me tell you. And I tell the leftists and the pinkos and the Justice Department henchmen that there's a new Fuhrer in town. Yeah, the old one-day dictator trick. How does that work? Because at the end of one day, it's going so well, I'm now president for life.
Although, you know what, guys? The reason that I wanted to lead off with that clip is it sort of speaks to, there is this sort of buffoonish side to Trump that, and he has, everybody lighting their hair on fire. And there are real reasons to fear him as an autocrat and a dictator based on the other things that he said. But this was really interesting because Hannity was actually trying desperately to help him. You wouldn't be a dictator.
Not
would
a
you?
dictator, like goose stepping, right? No, full deal. I'm in. Yeah, it was hilarious. Only for a day. Yeah, then he'll voluntarily surrender. No, there's a great thing you can find on the internet, a little short Danny DeVito directed early in his career for Showtime called The Selling of Vince D'Angelo, which every political consultant loves. And there's an abscam part because he's now a corrupt senator. And he's sitting there with the security camera watching him and he's stuffing money in his pockets. Does it show? Does it show? And the Joe Santos, the great old character actor playing the FBI guy. So let's be clear. We give you the money, you do us favors. Money for you. And he's like, yeah. Favors, money. I'm taking a bribe here. It was the same thing. He couldn't jump on the poor Hannity is sitting there trying to give him a life raft.
But there was actually a method to his madness, which is he said, yes, I'll be a dictator for one day so that I can, shut down the border, and what was the other? He had another.
Well, cleanse the Justice Department of lawyers.
He wanted to drill.
Oh, yeah, drill. And he got a huge hand for that. And it does speak to his idea of, what his message is like. He's back to, I'm the strong man. I can get this done. Biden weak, me strong. And he actually,
and I'm going to root out the vermin and the enemies of the state and the fellow travelers and the kulaks and everybody else. There's always an enemies list. It's classic.
The challenge is you begin to pull the string a little bit, right? As you said, David, he may have given this I couched it in this idea that I'm going to be a dictator for your causes for a day. But in reality, you pull that string and it quickly becomes the campaign of retribution, right? The policy
becomes that because that's what he...
Well, right. That's what he says.
Eruptions, right. That's what he says. That's what Hannity was trying to clean up.
And I was struck last week, too. I don't think I've ever seen this before, at least this early, certainly in a campaign. The campaign, the two senior people in the Trump campaign had to put out a statement that basically said, if you read about any policy that we're thinking of, or any person that we're putting into the government to institute that policy, all of which have been batshit crazy, none of that is true unless it comes from us.
Yeah, we handle the batshit crazy around here.
Right.
And
it's sort of like, hey, we know the guy's talking about retribution. So there's a group over here building the retribution plans, but pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
No, and in fact, Kash Patel, after Trump said the dictator thing and said was, talking about retribution and all of that stuff. And Saturday night in New York at some event, a Republican event there, Trump Kash Patel was in the audience, and Trump gave him a big attaboy and said, essentially stand by, Kash. So, it's going to be cash and carry once the election's over. But yeah, thanks. But
you're all weak. Tip your server.
But this too, like, I'm trying to focus on the fact that despite all of this crap, there's stuff going on here that people should take seriously about what he's doing. Trump knows his audience, and he's speaking to his audience. And yes, he gets off on these retribution jags that are cathartic for him, and they get old and perhaps scary to others. But that line, I was listening to the second part of it thinking, I get what he's doing there. What you're talking about, Robert, though, speaks to another piece here, which is the guy, for the first time since we've known him as a politician, actually has like operatives who know what they're doing.
To the extent he'll listen to them in the clutch. But yeah, the minute things start going bad for him, because he's been totally trotting along with no problems, then you find out.
Yeah. No, he's a weak link in this sort of we're going to be rational, insane strategy. But they also, and this leads into we're less than 5 weeks now from the Iowa caucuses, leads into this discussion. Like, they have an operation there. They're doing the things that candidates would do. He didn't have an operation in 2016. And we've talked about this before. They're working the state parties
they
to get the
control
rules
half
they
the state
want.
parties.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, so they've got an inside game that they didn't have before. So, Murphy, Iowa, brother, I remember
State in the Midwest, famous for corn, hogs, as you well know.
Yes. The Iowa poll came out. I remember our discussions about it early. The Register poll, yeah. The Iowa poll in the Register and Seltzer's sort of gold standard poll. I remember our discussions about it's early. Let's see what it's like, weeks before, because these all things break late. It's, according to her, breaking to Trump. He gained 8 points from October. Haley was even from October. DeSantis picked up 3. Trump picked up a lot of the pieces of Pence and Scott there. He's got the largest lead ever in the Iowa poll. So spin me, brother. What do you say now?
He's unstoppable. You're always right. No, I like this
all
poll.
All right, let's quit. I'm done for now.
No. You're a pollaholic.
Happy holidays,
let me give you the strategic view here. I drag myself from my COVID deathbed to make the show.
By the way,
you guys are still razzing me.
back.
Okay, so here's the real score.
If you had perished, I wouldn't have brought this up. I just want
you would have waited a week and then done let me play old tape. Anyway, let me go through Iowa. I like this poll because the question for me is who's second? Can Nikki finish off DeSantis and get the momentum to hit the New Hampshire upset? That's her only path. And Governor Sununu, New Hampshire, is endorsing her tonight in Manchester, and she's definitely doing well there. But if DeSantis beats her, that'll slow down the magic formula quite a bit. Now, early on, I thought there was a chance Trump could be upset in Iowa. Wrong. This poll indicates he'll come in first in Iowa. But now, jack up those expectations, Ann. What happens if you're an old news hound, and Gibbs, that world. Somebody's got to be the other story. Then Trump is invincible. So if Trump doesn't win by this huge margin, if he wins by a normally good margin, and if Nikki Haley beats DeSantis, the once invincible one in Iowa, what's the story out of Iowa? What's the media fixation for 10 days leading up to fertile New Hampshire? Trump front runner, but strong challenger emerges?
It does depend on the margin, because right now he is at 51 in this poll, and DeSantis is at 19 and she's at 16. So if she and DeSantis are hovering around 20 and he's over 50, then there is no other story. I mean, there's probably a story if she wins that DeSantis is going out.
What if he's under 50? What if he's under 45, 42?
I don't think that totally matters, to be honest with you. I think if he's over 42, you're living in a world, first of all, with very few candidates. I think the challenge that all the other candidates have and you see this in who gained in this poll, meaning Trump gained the most, it's because a lot of people's second choice isn't somebody else other than Trump. And so the challenge is, I think Trump's honestly going to come down. And if you look at the history of this, Bush was up, I think, 27, won by 11. Dole was up by like 28, won by 3. But I think very different dynamics in a race in which I think the momentum story isn't going to be for anybody else coming out of Iowa but Trump. I think if Nikki Haley finishes second by a point or 2, or DeSantis wins by 3, I think they're still going to look like people that are a lap down in the Indy 500.
I think it's going to be Trump and somebody, and the only interesting somebody is Nikki. And if she beats DeSantis, it's enough of a story. But we'll find out. It's almost upon us.
But it does matter. Like the ordering does matter because, I mean, I think DeSantis, if he finishes second, will be a zombie candidate, having mortgaged himself to win.
He'll be taking useless space. You also need Christie to get out of New Hampshire.
But he will stay if he finishes second. He's not going to drop out, I doubt.
I don't know. I hear it's bad inside, but we'll find out. We're finally getting to voting.
But on the Trump thing, though, Gibbs, one of the interesting findings in this poll is that of first-time voters, and there were a fair number of them, Trump was getting 63% of those, which is always the issue with him. He does bring new people out. The other thing is that 3/4 of the voters believe that he can beat Biden, and so that was at the beginning of the story. Well, he can't beat Biden.
That was the huge thing. That's what DeSantis and all these others, but primarily DeSantis, felt like, okay, the week after the 2022 election, there are going to be all these polls and all these people hand-wringing that, yes, Donald Trump gives a great rally, but he can't win. And that has dissipated, almost, if not completely dissipated. And that's what the challenge is for all these others is
correct.
Why do you want the guy who can sound like Trump but isn't Trump if the guy who is Trump can win?
Well, here's the problem. When all this stuff was cooked up a year to 17 months ago by candidates thinking, I'll take on Trump for the nomination, the vibe inside the party was Trump can lose. But the Democrats, and particularly the Biden folks, have done a magnificent job of running a political year so even Donald Trump looks like a winner, which has taken a lot of the energy out. So thank you, Democrats, for Donald Trump again. If somebody stronger was running right now in a surge, or if Biden had fixed himself, that energy would be there again, and it would be doing a lot for the non-Trump candidates. But it's totally dissipated. So now people think in the Republican Party, they've always thought the Trump supporters always thought, he'll debate her, call her names, win, or Biden. Now it's just seeped in everywhere. So the old vote for Trump, elect Biden thing, that formula is nowhere what it used to be.
But you can't blame that all on Democrats. I mean, you eat with a fork and knife. Republicans have gotten overrun.
No help from the Biden political suicide for a year. Thank you, Joe.
Everybody who's listening to this should just know that Axelrod and I were smiling and halfway through Murphy's compliment because we knew the backhand was coming.
Like you guys have both been in the front window going, "Go, Joe, go! Campaign of perfection." It has been a huge, huge assist.
We're going to get there. We're going to get there. But I just want to ask about endorsements, because Kim Reynolds, who's very popular among Republicans in Iowa, endorsed DeSantis between the last poll and this poll. So far, it's produced a big 3 points for him here. And the question is, what do these endorsements mean? What does Sununu's endorsement mean?
I don't think they mean a lot in a
Hampshire?
Presidential. It's not a county commissioner race, but I think Sununu is bigger in New Hampshire than Kim is in Iowa. We'll find out. Not enough if she's a weak third in Iowa, though.
So big Sununu's for her, huh?
Chris Sununu, governor.
Well, but I want to go back just for a second, because I'm not totally convinced that if DeSantis is ahead by 3 on caucus night over Haley, that somehow I'd be somewhat surprised if he dropped out after Iowa. I just don't, that's a lot of admitting that it's a lot of admitting that you screwed up in a way that I don't think I've seen his capacity thus far. I mean, his wife goes on TV and says, hey, you don't have to live in Iowa. Grandmothers and moms come from all over the world.
Yeah, that was a
and you can join the caucus. And he never said, oh,
insert the Murphy Chicago joke.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. What is it, Cook County? Mimeograph machine in the basement and the voter rolls?
He's still recovering from COVID, so I have to help him along here.
Yeah, I needed a nudge.
DeSantis, his whole thing was like, oh, no, what she was trying to do was say, come knock doors and be a volunteer, which, of course, is not what she was saying to do. But again, I think, look, for me, I think Haley's the only one, and Murphy, you know New Hampshire better than anyone, I think for her the story is going to be later if she finishes third and then finishes second. The real thing will be the final score in New Hampshire, right? Is does it look in a momentum play like the gap has gotten appreciably smaller? In other words, not just that she's rising, but that Trump is falling.
Oh, totally. I think she has a really simple, really hard to execute path, and she's the only one with a path. She needs, one, to do well in Iowa, which means beat DeSantis, which I still think she can do. The Register is a great poll. There's no such thing as a gold standard polling in a caucus.
Well, 3 points is a margin of error.
Yeah, right. 3 points is a sneeze and a good debate joke. So then she has to beat Trump. None of this, you can argue only 3-point win. No, you got to beat Trump and cut his head off. This is dinosaur fighting here in New Hampshire, and then you got to go beat him in South Carolina. Bing, bang, boom. That's how you do it. Hard, but not impossible.
We should point out that there probably will be a one-on-one debate between DeSantis and Haley in Iowa between now and the caucuses. CNN has announced such a debate. Fox may get into the mix, and they may, wherever it ends up, there will be one opportunity for her. And, she's Muhammad Ali compared to DeSantis. Kind of George Chuvalo for all you old boxing aficionados. But anyway, she's good. And so that may help her. Anyway, Gibbs, what were you going to say?
She's good, but I thought her last debate performance suffered greatly.
Yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't her best.
Yeah. Luckily, you had to have a shortwave radio to see it, but yeah.
Right. And I wonder, quite frankly, the debate that we're envisioning between the two of them, if it really does much to move people, because unless she's got an extraordinarily strong point of view about DeSantis that we really haven't heard yet.
Well, she doesn't have a strong point of view about anything. That's the flaw of her candidacy.
I think it's going to be two people standing at a podium saying, you said this, and the other person's going to say, you're lying about me.
I agree.
You said this, and you're lying about me. And it'll just be like the teacher from Charlie Brown.
I think it will be well watched in Iowa. We'll see. So the Wall Street Journal had a poll, and we'll just talk about it on the other end. Not a great poll for the president. Trump, for the first time, 4 points ahead in the poll. The internals were not good. Haley was up 17 on Biden, and not surprisingly, she made something of it when she was campaigning in Iowa. Let's listen to that.
She took a little slap at Trump, too, which is, an evolution for her.
You don't defeat Democrat chaos with Republican chaos. We have to get this right. And not only that, you look at these general election polls. The caucus is important. These primaries are important. But what's our end game? You look at these general election polls. Wall Street Journal, he told you about before. On any given day, Trump and Biden are even. On a good day, he's up by 2, he might be up by 4. It's all margin of error. In every one of those polls, I was up by 10 to 13. Now I'm up by 17 points.
Yeah, let me just start with a quick note to Team Haley. You're running for president. Get a malt box so the media can get decent audio of your candidate trying to hit a home run, for Christ's sake. Unbelievable. But
that's why they call him Mike Murphy.
Well, you can't hear him. You can't vote for him.
Yeah. But you were right. I left off the beginning where she again, I think she's more going for the capillary than the jugular with Trump. She said, she talked about it may not be his fault, but chaos follows him everywhere.
Yeah, no, it's a carom shot.
The hell, it's not his fault. I mean, there's a reason chaos follows him.
That's what they love. This is what she doesn't understand. This is what none of these guys understand is like, I guess her new slogan is, we beat the margin of error. Now, I don't know if that just makes me want to drive all the way to Iowa and participate in the
I agree. Although, I'll tell you, back in 95, we got a 10-point surge out of Alexander beats Clinton. Follow your ABCs in Iowa.
Follow your ABCs.
But normally I'm with you. Give a polling lecture. That'll stampede them. But she's trying to make the winnability argument.
Right. But that race was dull, right? That was dull, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like,
well, in a non-crazy electorate, compared to now.
If this was a race in which she and 6 other people, none of whom were dominating, none of whom cut the figure that Trump did inside of that party, that might be an argument that like it did for Alexander. But like they're still not getting the fact that like there has to be some emotion to this. There has to be, none of them is willing to run through the wall for her because of something she's done or said.
Honestly, I don't know where her votes come from in Iowa other than these suburban areas around Des Moines.
Yeah, no. Look, it's her problem is it's almost not. Though I think it's been subpar in some ways. It's not as much her message as there's Trump again can hardly wait versus time to move on, and the time to move on sector of the primary has shrunk over the year.
Right, that's
the
it.
electability thing has gone away. Thank you, Biden. And the Trump failures, it turns out his core base is fine with them. So she's just fishing in a narrower pond. She's done a good job as the best political athlete of eclipsing all the other move beyond Trump. But the market she's going after, particularly in Iowa, has shrunk. It hasn't shrunk so much in New Hampshire. But she can't get wiped out in Iowa and get the rocket fuel she needs to take advantage of what's potentially there for her in New Hampshire.
You think she has to beat him in New Hampshire to be viable post?
Yeah, if you want to be nominee, you want to be the new lion. The old lion's got to be limping away half dead with blood all over it. So yeah, if she doesn't beat Trump, he's Superman. The expectations will flip the other way. Her best shot, she failed.
I mean, you've said that before. It's just it's interesting to hear it again. I mean, again, this was.
Otherwise, you're just a parlor game. Oh, she had a couple weeks where she was kind of in second, and then she died.
Yep, gotcha.
He's just gathering more tape for reflections after.
Yeah, the crow sandwich issue, which is already under production.
Let's take a short break and hear from our sponsors.
All right, boys, the holiday season is coming, but
yes.
Holiday nights are fun, but what about holiday mornings? You got any scientific cutting-edge ideas to help people feel better after a fun night?
I think you cannot be the hosts of Hacks on Tap and not have some constructive ideas in this regard. Gibbs, give him a blast here.
Well, I was going to say, when you've had too much holiday cheer, when you just listen to this podcast and think, man, it can't get any worse than this.
You're driven to drink?
Yes. When you were driven to drink, we all have busy lives. We can't afford to waste a day getting mired in Murphy's depressive predictions about next year.
Gonna be worse.
That's why Zbiotics is the answer that you've been looking for. Zbiotics pre-alcohol probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic, invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. Let's not dwell on guts, guys. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Zbiotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down, designed to work like your liver, but in your gut when you need it most.
Let me break down. It's real simple. Have a Zbiotics. For best result, make Zbiotics your first drink of the night. Then drink responsibly, pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep. And then wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day.
Sounds like a great holiday gift. How do we get it?
All you got to do is go to zbiotics.com/hacks. That Zbiotic, by the way, is ZBIOTICS.com/hacks. And you get 15% off your first order when you use hacks at checkout.
Zbiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/hacks. and use the code HACKS at checkout for 15% off.
Thank you, Zbiotics,
for sponsoring
this episode. the Wall Street Journal poll was, very, very dark in terms from a Biden standpoint. Job approval down, ratings generally down. Most of the comparatives with Trump, not good. And the one that I think was most alarming from my standpoint was when they asked if Biden's policies and Trump's policies when they were president were helpful to people. Did people think they were helped in their lives? Only 23% of voters say Biden's policies have helped them personally, while 53% said they have been hurt by the president's agenda. By contrast, about half of voters say Trump's policies when he was president helped them personally, more than 37%, more than the 37% who said they were hurt. What I worry about, you guys, from a Biden standpoint is these are the kind of things you get when people are starting to rationalize their votes.
Oh, look, they're ready to fire Biden. That's the problem. And they just put out another photo op with the Bidenomics sign next to him. It is unbelievable to me. You see the Michigan data, I think CNN had or somebody?
Yeah, 2 CNN polls. One in Georgia had Trump up by 5. One in Michigan had Trump up by 10, a state that the Democratic governor won by 10 points just last November. I don't think, based on the private polling that I've heard about, I don't think
no, I don't think it's that high either, but it's bad.
But it's bad. I mean, and this wasn't one of the closest of the close states last time.
Let me get ready for whatever happens in Iowa with a preemptive credit claiming of my own here. I tried to explain to you guys, I tried with great patience about how bouncing around on a UAW picket line in Michigan was not a big political home run for Biden, because the UAW is a lot more polarizing there than it used to be, because most of the lower tier suppliers are non-union and they all had to eat air during the strike. So the Biden's running a great 1968 presidential campaign in Michigan, but it's just another their compass is wrong on this stuff, on how to talk about the economy and move voters. All right, Gibbs, all yours.
No, and Murphy, this would be something I want you to weigh in on too. I was talking to some friends in Michigan about this just yesterday, as my stomach hurt reading and through that Michigan poll. Is they mentioned to me, what's probably is most disconcerting is there is literally zero Republican apparatus inside of the state of Michigan right now.
It's 20 gorillas playing with a tire. That's the Michigan party.
Literally either headed to jail or trying to find 7 cents to do voter outreach. So the worrisome thing here is, and we can get into this at some point too, I mean, I think the Biden people really have to start playing campaign in a far more concerted way. They just hired a state director in Michigan, but
who is it?
I don't know the name. Okay. Was told they recently hired somebody, but it's time to take the one-day dictator stuff and make it part of everything, and they're starting to do that. Right? It is time to start drawing this choice, because I think a lot of us think through these polls we see, whether it's Michigan or the Wall Street Journal, and you think to yourself, okay, people just haven't made the turn yet to making the choice. These are still the Biden is bad, to Murphy's point, let's fire Biden polls. That's why Haley's up 17 and Trump's up this and blah, 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 blah. And if that's your view that they haven't made the choice yet, great. It's time to accelerate the clock and get people to make that choice. Force them to think that
they're way behind. And it's not surprising, because most of the people who are running the campaign are in the White House and not at the campaign. And I think those divided attentions have hurt them. One of the things that I think that we need to be mindful of is, one of the most important elements or decisions in this campaign may come next week or in the coming weeks, when the Supreme Court decides whether they're going to expedite this case, this claim of Trump's that he had, ultimate immunity and therefore can't be tried in Washington in March. If he succeeds in if he wins that case, or if he succeeds in delaying his trial past November, because that is a wild card. We don't know what it's going to do, but if he is convicted, That's
Yeah,
a wild
it's big.
card no one really understands.
To be fair, it's probably not a wild card. In a bunch of these polls, huge numbers of people say conviction is way different than indictment or allegation.
I know, but this guy has a way of slipping the noose, and so we'll see. I mean, I want to see it in real time. But Murphy, go ahead.
No,
Well,
I'm for all the stuff Gibbs was saying, and you've said it before, David, about comparative, go make it about Trump, blah, blah, blah. But still, that worries me. I do it.
Yeah.
But if I were for Biden, working for him, here's what would have me awake all night. They already hate Trump. And they still want to fire us. So we can go try to make them hate Trump even more. But if the thorn in the paw of the big mean bear is us, if we can't fix that or at least lower that pain level a lot, we can send Trump up to the stratosphere and negatives, but it's still about us in the end. We're the incumbent seeking to get rehired. That's where the whole Bidenomics disaster, et cetera, is fatal to him. And, it's almost easier to go do the Trump sucks campaign. They got to find a way. Now, the economy, there's some good numbers out, not that any voter believes them, but it shows if things start moving a little, instead of telling everybody they're wrong about the economy, which was plan A they had, there might be room to do it. And God, bring in the surrogates, the cabinet. The one-man Biden show is over. It doesn't work. They've got the hook.
I want to talk about that in a second. But, campaigns, I'm on the road and people are asking all the time, well, what issues are going to be important? And issues are important. They motivate constituencies. But narratives win elections. Narratives. What is the story that Biden, it can't be a story about his successes and kind of turning it into a referendum on himself. There has to be a narrative, and it can't just be about taking Trump down, and it can't ignore the fact that people have concerns. The overriding thing, and I've said it to you guys before, and I know you know it, it isn't any particular issue. It isn't inflation, although that's really important. It all supports a narrative of things are out of control and he's not in command, which is what the Republicans are selling, and he needs to defeat that narrative. And part of it is acknowledging certain things, including the fact that, there are concerns about his age. And the last thing I'll say on this, I don't think I've said this before, but, our buddy Saul Shore did a race for Ed Markey in Massachusetts in 2020, the primary race with Kennedy, ran an ad.
Good come from behind win for an troubled
AOC
incumbent.
may have narrated. I think she narrated the ad, but the words are what were important. She said, "It's not the age of the man that concerns me; it's the age of his ideas." And I think that Biden has to acknowledge these concerns. Neither he nor Trump are going to be around for they've both lived most of their lives. But the question is, what will they do to make the future better for?
Well, who wins and who loses in the future? It's your outcome too, America.
That's part of it. But there needs to be a larger narrative here that is reality-based and authentic.
Yes, and I want to pick up on that, because when I say let's get onto the campaign, draw the contrast, it can't just be opening the Washington Post and saying, "Ooh, we said this and it's on A4,
right,
and we got to react to A4 because Trump's bad,
not a
and Trump's
tactical
this, and
thing,
Trump's this, and Trump." Because if all of that does is just add up a bunch of things, as Murphy said, that already people don't like him, the forcing choice has to be where are you taking us over the course of the next 4 years? What is it that we're going to get in this transaction of who and how we vote?
Yes,
and I think unless or until the Biden campaign through Biden forces this, right? And we have to hear this from the candidate. Then I think it's all just going to be, and it drives me crazy. Like, again, we just take a clip, we just take a I guess, what do you call those? Whatever he puts out on Truth Social, those little tweets on Truth Social, and say, this is bad. We don't like this. This is bad. Look,
he's a rule breaker.
He opened the door with the Affordable Care Act stuff last week. He opened the door. And I don't know why, go do a speech on that. Go do a speech that says, you know what? For 8 years, you've been talking about repeal and replace. For 8 years, you've been working on replace. Tell us what it is. Tell us what it is, because, here's what you're doing away with. Tell us what it is. Focus it.
There's an old saw in advertising. Don't talk about the drill. Talk about the hole it makes. It's got to be about, do Trump and his cronies win, which is all about them, or does Joe Biden win, which is all about us and the future outcome?
Robert, you say the president should do these things, and the president should do some of these things, but they also have to acknowledge the reality that he can't be, as Mike said earlier, the ball carrier in the way that our candidate was or other candidates have been. He can't do it. Listen to this. Listen to this. I mean, he got himself into hot water last week with the comments he made at a fundraiser. I think we have the clip that reporters asked him after the fundraiser about why he was running for president, because he said in the fundraiser, it's because of Trump. And then listen to what he said to the press the next day.
Would you be running for president if Trump wasn't running?
I expect so, but look, he is running, and I have to run.
Would you drop out if Trump runs out?
No, not now.
Yeah, so he basically, the sound wasn't great, but she said, would you be running if Trump wasn't running? He said, I expect so, but he is running, and so I have to run. So then the implication is, and this is what he was trying to say to the people at the fundraiser, this is I'm the ancient warrior, and I have to strap my armor on one more time because democracy is at stake, and that's why I'm running, and you all ought to be engaged in that. But then the next day, the press asks him this question.
Do you think there is any Democrat who could defeat Donald Trump other than you?
Probably 50 of them.
You do believe that there are?
I'm not the only one to defeat him, but I will defeat him.
Who else do you think could defeat Donald Trump, Mr. President?
It's sort of head turning because he undercuts his own message. And so, when you talk about him, the message he should carry out there, there's limits to what he can do. And what they really need to do is, as Mike says, they have to have a battalion of surrogates out there, not the cabinet, because the cabinet, they can be out there, but they're limited. But there are all these presidential aspirants are eager to get out there, but they have to have a unified message. There has to be they all have to be singing off a song sheet. And I don't know that there's a song sheet.
No, there isn't. The song sheet is don't believe the statistics, you owe me re-election.
Right. Well, I'm for changing the music.
That's not a very harmonious song.
Let's get a new songwriter.
Sounds better than tuba.
But I still think, John Philip Sousa. I still think he's got to go out there and give the speech. I think now, to your point, yes, well, I would be, and in fairness to even Biden, nothing drives the staff crazier than walking away from the podium, being literally halfway out the door and turning around to answer one more question. So, look, I do think you could put him into an atmosphere, into a place where he can deliver this speech and then people can go pick up on it. I really do. I think, look, the truth is that's the minimum we'd be asking.
It still seems like a lift for him, but they got to try.
No, he can read a speech.
And by the way, what I do with the cabinet is I'd steal an old UK trick that always works. I would announce an economic sub-cabinet to tackle the turnaround, and I'd put all my little stars. I booted Judge Raimundo,
he is feeling
Mitch, and I'd make it an action team movie, and he's in the middle, and they're all fanning out, and the campaign says, oh, he looks old. He is old. The young blood all around him, laser focus on the economy, the big plan. We've suffered the pain. We've done the work. Now we got to manage the turn for the middle class, not for Trump's payola buddies.
But mechanics aside, Axe, I totally agree. I mean, I think there has to be a narrative thing. There has to be something of why this is important. Why is it at stake? It's that, and tell us, and put some meat on the bones of it's about democracy.
It's not one speech and then walk away from the podium and go back to sort of tactical hits about a million different things. It's like, this is what this campaign's about, and this is what I'm going to talk about from now until...
No, it's not a speech, it's a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
It's got a beginning, middle, and the end, big narrative, all the way to the convention.
And it has to show up every day.
Let's stop for a minute and listen to a word from one of our fine sponsors.
Hey, guys, you remember your first holiday ever?
No, not really.
But I bet your parents do, and they have the pictures to prove it, probably a lot of pictures to prove it. I'd like to see your cute little baby pictures with your chubby little wait, I'm looking at chubby little cheeks right now. But even if they have one or two on the wall, there's a ton they haven't seen in years. And you can put all those amazing childhood Christmas photos in a place where your parents can actually see them with an Aura digital frame.
That is a cool idea. You know, recently I was helping my dad go through a shoebox full of old photos down in the basement. And there's so many because back then they couldn't store them electronically. So they get lost forever. With this, you don't only, organize them electronically, but you get this cool picture frame, works on Wi-Fi, that'll show you all the pictures. And hey, practical jokers, these things are fun too because you can send friends a bunch of great photos and put a few surprises in on the end, but keep it tasteful.
For all the reasons Mike Murphy just said, Aura was named the #1 digital frame by Wirecutter, The Strategist, and Wired. And it doesn't have to be just your pictures. In the app, you can add other members, so your siblings and cousins and friends and all can all upload their photos too. There's unlimited storage, unlimited. So you don't even have to fight over it.
And it's easy to program. It all works off an app, or you can do it online. It is a wonderful gift. I've seen these things. I love them. So give the perfect gift this holiday season, and Gibbs will tell you how.
Just visit auraframes.com today and get $30 off their best-selling frames with the code HACKS. These frames sell out quickly, though, so get yours before they're gone. That's AURA frames.com with the promo code HACKS.
Terms and conditions apply. Two things I want to cover here that are...
Have we ended the Biden therapy session here?
Well, we'll have plenty of those.
Oh, I believe it.
But this has to do with the Hunter Biden indictment and the impeachment inquiry that clearly the House is about to begin. I mean, I'm of the mind that the Hunter Biden thing may be damaging to Biden in the sense that he's a father and it is a terribly draining ordeal for your son to be in the crosshairs like that. I know they're trying to muddy the waters, but the House has done a terrible job of trying to in any way implicate Biden in any of this. So I think the real damage to Biden, if there is damage, is more on the emotional toll it takes and less on the political side. But I'm wondering what you guys think about that. And then I want to talk about the impeachment thing.
I think you're essentially right. And the last thing Biden needs is more distractions because he's still having trouble with A plus B plus C. I think, the Republican House conference, you can see the difference emerging between them and the Senate. They think every election is a Republican primary. And for 3/4 of them, that's true. So with their narrow scope, they think a big political home run, I'll get 3 Fox hits out of this. But in the larger branding question, it's a disaster. The problem is, as bad as they do, they're not as big of a thing in the voter equation as the incumbent president. Keep him or fire him.
Right. Well, it will affect, the 18 who are in Biden districts are probably not real enthused about all of this because, listen to this exchange. This was after the indictment. The House subpoenaed Biden to appear this week. He said he'd do it in public. Hunter Biden, they said, no, it has to be in private. And Chairman Comer had this exchange with Jake Tapper.
We think that this is just the tip of the iceberg. We think there are many more crimes. And my concern is that Weiss may have indicted Hunter Biden to protect him from having to be deposed.
Yes.
In the House Oversight Committee on Wednesday.
He indicted him to protect him. Yes. The classic rubric. He indicted him to protect him. I got it.
Well, look, this whole thing's been about a cover-up. You've got two.
That's why he indicted him to protect him, to cover it up?
Well, you indict him on the least little thing, the gun charge, and not paying taxes.
He's facing like 17 additional years in prison.
Yeah, but look what he's done. Anybody else?
Well, they got it figured out. Nice to hear that Mensa's taping their meetings now.
But I mean, but the Speaker of the House went off to visit with Trump, came back and announced that he's going to launch an impeachment inquiry. I think Trump is demanding it. I think his supporters in the House are demanding it. Maybe Johnson stops it there, and there's never actually a vote to move forward on impeachment. But it is this sort of, as you point out, Mike, it's a crazy deal that they're trying to navigate there. And I think it will have impact, if not on the presidential race, although it adds to the coloration of it. It will have an impact on who wins the House next year if they move forward on this stuff.
And I wouldn't be surprised too if this does help a bit rally some of the Democratic base. This notion of, listening to I don't even want to, I guess I have to still call it logic, as the tortured logic of the people running this. There may be all these other crimes. We don't know what those other crimes are, but we're gonna wind up an impeachment inquiry to figure out the crimes.
It's all theater to feed direct response and TV hits and a narrow rage-filled segment of the votes.
Crimes to be disclosed later, to TBD is not very. So the other thing on the House, Zelensky is here. They're obviously in a desperate situation. We're at an inflection point. And the Senate and House, Langford, who's a reasonable guy in the Senate, and then the House with maybe less reasonable people, are holding out for tougher immigration changes. I've said this before. It seems to me Biden needs to cut a deal on this.
Yeah, he ought to surrender, take the win, take the issue away, and save Ukraine. And I don't know why they're being stubborn.
And also, by the way, do something about the border.
Yeah, that's what it means.
Right,
yeah.
Which is a thorn in the paw again. So let the Republicans own the border. Good luck. And get his Ukraine money. It's not a hard one, I think. I don't know. There's some stubbornness here, which is a through line of the Biden presidency.
He has said that he's willing to negotiate and that he's open. I think finding something that will irritate his base but not rupture it is probably what he's looking for. But I think I would be venturesome on that point because, like, I'm sitting here in the city of Chicago, 25 buses a week coming in here. People are pissed.
They all get to vote 3 times, too.
And to that point about whether you're going to cut a deal that might not make your base all that excited, if you rip a Band-Aid off slowly, it hurts a whole lot more than if you just rip it off.
Right. I would do a preemptive thing and come back to them with 80% of what they want and then dare them to act.
I'm surprised that they've waited this long just to cut the deal on this. And I don't know whether look, this is what happens when you've got Biden is doing this, but you've also got Congress that is making some of these deals, and they're the ones that are going to have to vote on it in a most immediate form. But I'm surprised they haven't cut the deal yet. I'm surprised they got through the weekend without them doing this. I think now that you've brought Zelensky to the U.S., to come away with no Ukrainian aid, to your point, David, makes the president look not strong, makes the president look weak in a way. Even if they aren't really excited about sending a bunch of money to Ukraine, do you really want to show up as this weak?
Narrative-wise, Biden could really play this well. It's the old trick of retreat till the enemy's out of gas and counterattack. Give it to him. Fund Zelensky. Get Zelensky the planes, the F-16s, where they're training pilots now. The Europeans are going to pony up the planes. Biden's a year late on this. And then they will have a turn in the spring. Later in the spring, when they start in the summer, when they can operationalize the planes. Then you've got the Biden comeback in Ukraine for Zelensky.
You had asked earlier, Murphy, if we were done with the Biden therapy session, and I want to add one more thing. And this comes from our friend, and he's been on the show. We should probably get him back on again. Doug Sosnick has these, kind of big memos that he puts out.
He puts out kind of summary reports.
I'm going to read what Doug puts in. He's got a new memo out today, and I think it's important. History shows that Biden is entering a critical period for a president running for re-election. The first and second quarters of the 4th year in office are the most important in demonstrating to the public that the country is headed in the right direction. He goes on to talk about the fact that in the latest Wall Street Journal poll, while overwhelmingly negative about Biden's current standing, there was a 6% increase in voters who thought the country was headed in the right direction compared to the previous poll. So, I think we have talked about the fact that, yes, if the election were held today, the polls would show, I think Joe Biden would lose that election. Because the election isn't today, there are some important things that'll happen, and it's got to happen fast, I admit. You've got a couple of quarters to get people, to your point, Murphy, to thinking differently about this economy, to throwing in what that choice is, and to thinking through how to demonstrate strength.
Totally. I'd be thinking about how to orchestrate the comeback. So August in September is a hell of a lot different than now. What steps do we have to do along the way?
Yeah, whatever you do, the narrative has to. I mean, again, everybody's we're tiptoeing around the fundamental issue. You have to address people's concerns. This election is boiling down to a contest of risk assessment. And the risk on the side of Biden has to do with age and strength, and you sort of have to redefine how people are looking at this election from a message standpoint. So this being the last podcast of the year,
I know, unbelievable.
Before we enter the election year. I don't know how you want to approach this. I don't want to go through a whole list of predictions because it just raises the risk of us being wrong about everything. Is there one particular surprising prediction that you guys would make for 2024?
Oh, I haven't even thought about it other than Nikki's going to give Trump a lot more of a run in New Hampshire than conventional wisdom thinks. But I've said that for a year. Not Nikki, somebody. It turns out it's her. What do I think? I think
I shouldn't have put you on the spot like this. What about Trump's VP?
Oh, God. It'll be like, Star Search at the gates of hell. Carrie Lake. There's probably some Russian autocrat putting a bid in.
But do you think that the campaign heads will control that?
No. See, I don't buy this thing about the smart Trump campaign. I mean, LaCivita's a good operative. He's got people, but they've had an easy job so far. They've sat ahead in the polls and just kind of farted their way along. They've never really been challenged, never really had a crisis, which is where Trump will not listen to anybody but Trump. So, if they get into a tight New Hampshire thing, then we'll see if he listens to these guys. They've had the easiest job in the world, which is like organizing sales for Philip Morris when you have a 50% market share and advertising's illegal. You just put in the orders and go home at 4. I'm waiting to see it where they actually manage Trump.
Ax, who's your pick for VP? So you threw the question out.
Well, no, I'm asking the questions. I don't have to.
He likes to critique the predictions more than make them.
I mean, if I were advising him, I would probably go a Haley. That would be the conventional and smart thing to do. But I keep thinking that Tim Scott may turn up on this ticket and that he may endorse Trump in South Carolina.
Yeah, in Trump's limited Queen's 1970 view of the world, it's like, hey, I nominate the black guy and I get all the blacks. Unbeatable. So I think there's something to go there. And we know from the campaign that Scott is far more pliable than I thought he would be.
And he's not going to I think Trump doesn't want to be upstaged. So, I think that, so I just keep thinking it will be him. You have another thought, Gibbs?
No, I mean, Stefanik was the one that I think is I've thought for a while out of New York and who's gotten a lot of publicity in the last week in talking about university presidents and the Ivy League.
Oh, Elise Stefanik.
Yeah.
Oh,
as somebody who, and certainly I think, obviously she's shown very immensely to be quite pliable to somebody like Trump.
Unbelievable.
She's Gumby.
Record setter.
He loves that.
Yeah, by the way, Gibbs, you're still in the consulting biz. You guys are still in the consulting biz, Murphy. I bet you there might be some willing clients among these university presidents right now, but that's a different story.
Yeah, I stand with Israel.
Trump views these things like a casting director, though, and
totally.
Elise Stefanik may not be glam enough for him.
Right.
So
right.
he may go for like a Kristi Noem.
That's why
like
I'm pitching her. It'll be like, he'll want a centerfold picture to make his final decision.
Yeah.
One prediction, I don't know if it's a prediction as much as I think well, maybe I'll make it a prediction, see if we're wrong. I'm going to give you 2 predictions because I'm hoping one is wrong.
Wow.
But
the
first prediction is I think Democrats are going to hold the Senate seats in in Ohio and Montana. And the reason I think that, you got very red states.
I thought I was out on a limb.
And you got a lot of evidence in the last few election cycles. Only Susan Collins has won a Senate race in a state that was different than where the presidential contender was. I think Sherrod Brown and John Tester will defy that. My other prediction, because Ax, I like the fact that you say predictions that we make won't come true. I'm predicting the Dodgers sweep and win the World Series. I'm wearing my Braves hat, so now that's not going to come true.
I'll add one prediction for the hell of it, and then final one from you, and we got to hit the music. This is a big 20-pound sack of Zoloft to all our panicking Biden supporters. I think in the end, Biden does beat Trump in the reelect, but boy, it'll be a lot scarier than it should be.
Agree.
Yeah. I tend that way myself, and I agree with your conclusion. I mean, I just... the burdens that Trump ultimately will be carrying into this election are such that you would expect that, but they've got a lot of work to do between now and then.
Let's stop for a minute and listen to a word from one of our fine sponsors.
My brother-in-law died suddenly, and now my sister and her kids have to sell their home. That's why I told my husband we could not put off getting life insurance any longer. An agent offered us a 10-year, $500,000 policy for nearly $50 a month. Then we called SelectQuote. SelectQuote found us identical coverage for only $19 a month, a savings of $369 a year.
Whether you need a $500,000 policy or a $5 million policy, SelectQuote could save you more than 50% on term life insurance.
For your free quote, go to SelectQuote.com. SelectQuote.com. That's SelectQuote.com.
SelectQuote. We shop. You save. Full details on example policies at SelectQuote.com/commercials.
If you have a question for the Hacks, all you got to do is email us at hacksontap@gmail.com, hacksontap@gmail.com, or if for you modern communications types, you want to send us a voicemail, just keep it 20 seconds or so, no speeches. Bloviating is our job, not yours. But you call our off-track betting number in Chicago somewhere. You can also register to vote again if you feel like it. And that number is 773-389-4471. We've recorded it because nobody can remember the damn thing. So there you go.
That was your AI-generated voice. That was very snappy.
No, he'll be taking over the show next year. I'll be on a beach working on my Portuguese citizenship. All right, the mailbag. Question 1 to the one and only Robert Z. Gibbs. This is on voicemail, one of our techie listeners.
Hey, Hacks, this is Tyler from Texas. Realistically, what would happen if Biden dropped out at this point? Would Congressman Phillips automatically be the nominee, or would the DNC have to meet to create a new process to allow for a competitive primary? Thanks so much.
Go ahead, Gibbs. Solve the man's problem.
Well, look, I think the likelihood that he's going to drop out is somewhere close to zero, right? We've talked about this. We've done this ad nauseum. Well, could he still make up his mind? Could he still do this? Could he still change his mind? Could he still drop out? He's not dropping out. This is the pitcher. Right. And we got a long way to go. We're in the third inning and the pitcher's got to go a full 9. I don't know, Ax, or Murphy, what the actual delegate thing would be. I assume the DNC would get together and basically rejigger the process for how one would go through the convention.
I think
delegates.
It depends on the time. The convention, Biden would unbind his delegates and the convention would then, I think, be free to choose who they would choose. If something happened after the convention, I think then the DNC itself would make the choice.
Yeah, I think that's right. But I think the Democrats don't pick delegates until South Carolina. No, but no delegates in Iowa, no delegates in New Hampshire.
Though some of the filing deadlines have passed.
Yeah.
So, like, you win Alabama, you don't get any delegates now. But you're right.
I
they
guess
would
states
find
could
a way.
Scramble on that. But
the thing to keep an eye on is, remember, the delegates are not individual free-thinking thing. A lot of them are members of public employee unions, teachers. In the old Republican days, a lot of the Pat Robertson people were the bodies, though the primaries pledged them to Bob Dole. And the great nightmare was on the third or fourth ballot when they're freed up, they're all for Pat. So you really have to start looking at who the bodies are, or the composition of the DNC, which is a much larger number of people than the RNC, which is only about 148 or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's kind of a goat rodeo.
Yeah,
but But I've said, and I said what I said some weeks ago about this. Like, only Biden can decide whether Biden's going to be the nominee or not. No one else is going to make this decision for him. He's not going to be beaten in a primary. He's not going to be removed. He's not going to, and as Gibbs says, I mean, it's the third inning of a 9-inning game. And the question is just, will his arm hold out?
And the minor question, which is dark, and I don't want to dwell on it, is just biology, if he were to have a serious medical thing. True for any president.
No, nobody wishes for that, but we shall see. Okay, I want to ask a question of Mike from John, who asked, with Mike's background with John McCain, are there any corollaries that we can see to how Nikki Haley versus Trump relates to John McCain versus George W. Bush in the 2000 primaries? He will never pass, my friends, a chance to speak about those halcyon days.
It was great. John, I miss you. So, one, Haley is no John McCain. But that said, the structure of the New Hampshire primary is good for quirky, non-base candidates. John Kasich, we remember, kind of bubbled to the top along with Trump in 2016. So here's the thing to remember. It is likely that the composition of the Republican primary vote in New Hampshire will be anywhere between 40 and 46% independent voters. Now, there's no law that independent voters won't vote for Trump in a primary. He did okay with them last time. But the real reason McCain blew it out in New Hampshire in 2000 is a double-digit win among the independent voters. Without that, he would have won, but narrowly. So the question is, can Nikki grab all that and a breakaway chunk of Republicans to have a significant win over Trump? And that's why I keep saying I think she's in the hunt in New Hampshire. It is the best terrain for her of the early states. But, we'll see. If she's a third-place loser out of Iowa, a little of that magic fairy dust won't be there. But she will have a similar voter construct if she pulls it off to what John did in 2000.
Also, the Christie problem in
right, he's got to get
Hampshire.
out, which I think he will do. That's another prediction. I predict Christie will wait till the last minute and be for Haley.
Well, the interesting parallel, too, with the McCain stuff, it largely come down to South Carolina.
Right, where she's got a lot more than we did. That's the other thing. She's a pre-aware title there. We were
We'll see about Christie in New Hampshire. I think to the degree she's dancing around the issue of Trump, it's harder for him to justify getting out. Anyway, you got one for me?
Yeah, I do. And then we're going to our special shout out this week to end the year with. This is from Phil. Phil wants to know, much has been written about Trump will do if elected, but what do you think he'll do if he loses?
Well, let's just remember that Donald Trump is running not just to be president of the United States, but to stay out of prison. And I think there's a level of desperation there. We know he'll never accept defeat. And if he were to lose, he will clearly claim fraud. I mean, he pre-claims fraud before elections. And the question is, what will his supporters do? He's become more and more unhinged in his rhetoric, irresponsible in his rhetoric. And, we saw what happened on January 6th when people were told that the election was stolen. They thought it was their patriotic duty to storm the Capitol and right this wrong. I think this could be magnified dramatically in this election. I also think, by the way, if Nikki Haley ever did defeat Trump or anyone defeated Trump for the nomination, he would, unless he cut a deal for a pardon, he would do his level best to
sink the boat.
To sink the boat. So, but we'll, we'll see if we have the chance to find out what Trump does if he loses. There are a lot of open questions coming in this next year. And the one prediction I have to end all of this and get to our final stanza here of the year is that there are things that are going to happen in 2024 that none of us sitting here can predict that will have a material impact on this election, because there always are. The thing that you fear in campaigns
the unknown
is not the unknown unknowns, and they always happen. And they could strengthen Biden as president. They could ruin Biden as president. They could impact on Trump. We don't know what they all are. So in addition to the crazy twists and turns of a year in which we have an indicted former president on trial, or potentially on trial, there are a lot of other things.
I mean, hell, Biden could be looking at 10 years if he gets within 3 feet of you. All of a sudden, president guilty in manslaughter attack. So we will wait and see. But
I'm too quick for him. I'm too quick for him.
Yeah, get a head start. He'll be rage sprinting. All right, so let's get to our golden moment of the year here. My daughter's school does an auction every year for all kinds of good stuff they do, and I always auction off dinner with world famous political consultant Mike Murphy. And this year they came to me and said, we'd like to raise more than $20. We're just not getting the bids here. So I said, well, how about this? Why don't you auction off a shout out on Hacks on Tap with our worldwide voice and influence? Over 13 million downloads to date. And they said, great. So they had an auction. And the bidding was fierce. Oligarchs from around the world, causes, celebrities, starlets. You couldn't believe it. But a nice woman named Emily won the auction and sent me a note. Hey, Hacks, I won. I have one request for my shout out. I thought, promoting a new movie perhaps or a cause? No, I want you to roast my husband, Jon Favreau. And I'm not talking about the movie star Jon Favreau. I'm going down the rung a couple of hundred notches to former Obama speechwriter, the man who said, look, when you get to Washington, none of this charm stuff. Go with the cold Vulcan fish thing. It'll win you friends everywhere. Legendary Obama speechwriter Jon Favreau gets our shout out and a little insulting from me and, of course, his two buddies here, though I like them too, which I shouldn't admit in a roast, Mr. Axelrod and Gibbs. I think you invented this problem by hiring him. So why don't we go to you first to make contrition for what was clearly bad judgment?
Tell the story about Obama's first meeting with Jon Favreau. I think that's an oldie but goodie.
It's exactly where I was going. We were practicing the draft of the convention speech that people now famously know that Obama gave in 2004, and we were in a practice session, and Obama had a great line that he really loved, about both the red and the blue, which you remember in the thing, but he talked about how the red and the blue come together.
We all pledge allegiance to the red, white, and blue, yeah.
And so he loved that line. And Favreau, who was a young junior speechwriter, and
22 years old,
he had been my assistant in my short-lived experience in the John Kerry presidential campaign.
Oh, he helped you bring that one down too. Okay.
And so Favreau calls. Favreau is in the room while we're doing the speech rep, and he comes over to me and he says, "Hey, I need to talk to your candidate about that line there. An almost identical line appears in John Kerry's acceptance speech for the nomination, and we're going to need him to take that out." So I said, you know what? Patted him on the back, and I said, John, let me introduce you to Barack Obama, and you can go do that.
Classic staff move.
Yeah, and I just said, I walked him over, introduced him, and walked back to where I was sitting. Interestingly, when then candidate Obama was elected to the U.S. Senate, I did hire John to be his speechwriter in 2005. And John met with Barack Obama the morning of Bush's inauguration in 2005 in one of the Senate cafeterias. And when we were walking down, I said to then Senator Obama, he was like, who am I going to meet? What's this about? It's a speechwriter. It says, and then right before I left him, just as I was like turning the corner of the Senate cafeteria, I'm like, you may remember John. He was the one who took one of the lines you really loved out of your convention speech in 2004. And then I basically put him on the back and introduced them again and also walked away. So my claim to fame with John and to Senator Obama is that relationship. I helped bring them together multiple times without interrupting.
And developed a great alibi for yourself in two possible bad moments. Go ahead, Axe.
See?
No, he couldn't roast him any more than he threw him in the lion's den then. I mean, I think that's good enough. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that moment when we sent that young lad, crew-cutted, doe-eyed,
yes,
young man
Idealist.
to tell Obama to take his favorite
Cherished
line out,
yeah,
because Kerry had magically lighted on the same.
The great thing about the story,
instruction.
just so people know, is many, many days before any of these speeches are given, you've got to give a draft. We gave multiple drafts to the DNC. In fact, we went through this whole process where at one point we were told Barack Obama would have 7 minutes to do the keynote.
Yeah.
That's a story for a different time about what we unwound for that. But you have to give all these different drafts. So it's not as if, obviously, the what makes the story great is it's pretty clear that somebody in the speechwriting room read it, lifted the line, put it into Kerry's speech, and then poor John had to come find out how to get that line out of there.
Yes. Oh, boy, that's
But by
tough.
the way, John Kerry turned 80 on on Monday, so happy birthday to him.
He's
and
not
to
running.
Emily, John's wife, let me say we all have a deep debt of gratitude to you for pulling John out of his adolescence in his late 30s and turning him to the responsible citizen that he is today. So good for you. We're very, very grateful.
So-
hey, guys, I'm grateful to you guys as well as we ring out this year. Tons of fun to be with you. Can't wait for the new year.
What do we talk about next year?
Yeah.
Oh, there will be plenty. It won't be Favreau. I think we've exhausted that, but thank you. I have to
Unless he
clean up
buys
this
another
book.
auction thing. But
Yeah, no,
anyway,
look, get out your credit card. We are for sale. Kim Jong-il, I'm talking to you.
to all our great listeners, all our hackaroos, we wish you a very happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and a very, very happy, healthy New Year.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy New Year.
And see you next year when the year turns and the primary season really begins.